My name is Serafina Jones. I'm 32, and for years my life was defined by my mother's words. I flew back to Charlotte, North Carolina, for what was supposed to be a celebratory moment. My mother, Vivian, was finally moving into a decent house. Not a mansion, but a solid 3-bedroom brick ranch in a quiet neighborhood. My sister Kendra and I had chipped in for the down payment. Mostly me, as always. The housewarming party was a beautiful, humid August afternoon. The air was thick with the smell of my Aunt Carol's famous sweet tea and the faint, fresh scent of new paint. Everyone was there, cousins, church friends, the whole family orbit. Mom was beaming, holding court in her brand-new kitchen, accepting compliments like she'd built the place with her own 2 hands. I watched her from the periphery, a small, proud smile on my face. This was it. The moment I felt I'd earned my small slice of peace. I had worked 3 jobs for 2 years to put my mother in a safe place, believing that finally fulfilling this huge responsibility would earn me not just her gratitude, but her respect. That was the dream. The reality, as always, was a sharp, cold slap. I walked over with a platter of cookies, and Kendra, who had contributed a grand total of $500 while simultaneously maxing out 2 credit cards, immediately swooped in. "Mom, look, aren't the curtains I picked out perfect? They tie the whole room together." Mom cooed, "Oh, they're beautiful, sweetie. My little decorator." She didn't even look at the cookies I was holding. She just looked past me, a faint, familiar disapproval hardening her gaze. She was wearing the gold bracelet I had bought her for her birthday, paid for with a week's worth of graveyard shifts. "Serafina," she said, her voice dropping a little, just enough so only I could hear over the cheerful din. "You really should try to save up for something for yourself one day. Not just rent. It's sad, honey. At your age, you should have something permanent. A nice car, a proper condo. But you're always just scraping by, aren't you? I worry you'll never actually own anything of value." It hit me like a physical blow, not because of the insult, but because of the sheer, careless cruelty of it. She knew my savings had been obliterated to secure this house. She knew I was living in a cramped studio apartment downtown, putting every extra cent toward the mortgage and her bills. She wasn't just discounting my sacrifice. She was spitting on it while standing in the very place my sacrifice had provided. My smile didn't waver. That's the first lesson you learn when dealing with family that takes more than they give. You never let them see the sting. You internalize the pain and weaponize the calm. I put the cookies down very slowly, smoothing out the paper liner. "You know, Mom," I said, my voice steady, perhaps a little too light. "That's funny, because for a long time I thought that too. I thought I'd never own anything that mattered." Kendra giggled, oblivious, sipping her punch. "Yeah, Serafina is a little too focused on those boring spreadsheets instead of living a little." Mom nodded in agreement, a smug little curl to her lip. That was my cue. I let the silence stretch for a moment, the hum of the party feeling miles away. I took a deep breath. Now, before I tell you what I did next, a move that changed the map of our entire family dynamic, I need to know. Have you ever had a moment where someone you loved took your biggest sacrifice and threw it back in your face as an insult? Drop your story in the comments and hit the like button if you believe true ownership isn't just about property, but about owning your own peace. Trust me, what happened when I answered her is something you won't want to miss. I let Mom bask in the glow of her assumed superiority for a few more minutes, smiling and nodding as she went on about the granite countertops I'd paid for. Every word she spoke about this house, about the financial freedom she now had, felt like a fresh cut. I knew I had to wait for the perfect moment. The machine learning model I've studied shows that the peak emotional payoff in these narratives comes when the protagonist shifts from being the victim to the unexpected architect of the event. The climax must not just be a reaction, but a planned surgical strike that reveals a deeper, hidden truth. I waited until Dad, who had divorced Mom years ago but was still a reluctant fixture at family events, pulled me aside. "You did a good thing, Sarah. She looks happy," he murmured, patting my arm. I gave him a weak smile. "I know, Dad. I'm glad she's comfortable." That's when I saw the real estate lawyer, Mr. Thompson, walk in. He was a small, quiet man, wearing a suit that looked too hot for a Carolina summer. His presence was my signal. I straightened my shoulders, walked back into the living room, and clinked my glass. The room quieted down in a ripple. "Excuse me, everyone. Can I get everyone's attention for just a second?" I projected my voice, making sure it carried over the soft jazz playing on the stereo. Mom looked annoyed. "What is it, Serafina? I was just showing Mrs. Davis my new sunroom." I smiled sweetly. "It's important, Mom. I actually have a very important gift, or maybe a necessary formality for the new homeowner." I walked over to my purse, which was sitting on the dining room table, and pulled out a simple manila envelope. My heart was pounding a rhythm against my ribs that felt too loud. The entire family, now fully focused, watched as I walked the few steps back to her. Kendra was looking at me with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. I handed the envelope to Mom. "Since we're celebrating you finally owning a home, Mom, I thought we should make things official. This is the last bit of paperwork. It needs your signature." Mom took the envelope, her brow furrowed. She looked at me, then at the envelope, then back at me. "Paperwork? What paperwork? I already signed everything with the bank." "It's a little something extra," I said, keeping my gaze locked with hers. "Please open it." She slid a perfectly manicured finger under the flap and pulled out the contents. It wasn't one document. It was 3. The first was a warranty deed. The second was a release of lien. The third was a letter from my attorney. Her eyes scanned the first document, and a faint, thin line of confusion appeared between her eyebrows. Then her eyes hit the names. Grantor, Serafina Jones. Grantee, Vivian Jones. She read it again, her breath hitching. The blood drained from her face, just like the dad in the script when he realized his son's party money came from the wrong source. The laughter in the room died completely. Mom's face went from confusion to a terrifying ashen white. The hand holding the deed began to tremble. Her eyes lifted from the paper and fixed on mine, wide and accusatory. What is this, Serafina?" she whispered, the color gone from her lips. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke, Mom," I said, my voice cutting through the heavy silence. "That's the warranty deed for this house. I bought it, remember? Not we. I put every cent I had into it. And that document, which is now legally filed in Mecklenburg County, is me signing the house over to you. Free and clear. No mortgage, no loan, just yours." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Kendra dropped her glass of punch, the sound of the plastic hitting the hardwood floor echoing the shock. Aunt Carol covered her mouth with her hand. Mom looked at the second document, the release of lien. It officially declared the property free from any debt. She saw my signature, and then the bank seal, indicating the final payoff had been completed just last week. That's when the true meaning of the paperwork sank in. She wasn't just living in a house I helped her get. She was standing in a house she owned outright, something I had made sure of before the party. And the third document? That was the final devastating piece of my quiet, calculated response. "The third one is a notarized agreement," I continued, folding my arms. "It states that, in exchange for the full, free, and clear ownership of this property, which is worth a little over $350,000, you officially sign over all your rights and claims to your portion of Grandma Essie's estate, including the house in Beaufort. I'm simply transferring a different kind of ownership for all that hard work I did." I had known for years that my mother was banking on inheriting Grandma Essie's beach house, a property she desperately wanted but had no claim to, save for her status as a primary heir. Grandma Essie had died 6 months ago, and the estate was about to enter probate. My mother had already spent her supposed inheritance in her mind. I had been quietly working with the estate lawyer, who was also Mr. Thompson, my little guest. The agreement I handed her wasn't a standard document. It was a carefully structured, legally binding exchange of assets. My $350,000 house for her share in Grandma's estate, which was valued at only $200,000 due to significant needed repairs. My mother, in her greed and desperate need to own something, had always belittled my financial capability, constantly telling me I was too naive for real investments. The moment she had insulted me, comparing me to Kendra and dismissing my efforts, I had known this was the moment to execute the final stage of the plan. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through an app. And there's one more thing, Mom. See that notification? That's a direct deposit into your new checking account. It's the remaining balance, the difference between the fair market value of this property and your lower stake in the estate. I didn't want you to feel cheated. It's $150,000 deposited right now. You now own this house free and clear, and you have $150,000 in the bank. You are financially set. I looked her dead in the eye, echoing her own words with a calm that chilled the room. You don't have to worry about scraping by anymore. You finally own something of value, Mom. Something permanent. The silence was deafening. Every relative in the room was staring at the stack of papers in my mother's shaking hand, their faces a canvas of disbelief, realizing that Serafina, the quiet, ignored daughter, had just pulled off the most magnificent and financially complex power move they had ever seen. The housewarming was effectively over. My mother's mouth was moving, but no words came out. She just kept looking from the deed, to the bank receipt, to my face. The realization that she had just traded her future, which was the sentimental Beaufort house, for the immediate concrete gain of the Charlotte house, plus a large sum of cash, was too much for her to process in the heat of her pride. Kendra, however, found her voice. "Sarah, you tricked her. You can't just buy her share," she screeched, advancing towards me. I held up a hand. "Kendra, Mr. Thompson is here. He can confirm every document is perfectly legal and notarized. Mom is a full outright owner of this house, and she has $150,000 in cash. It was a trade. A good one, financially speaking. If she had ever taken 5 minutes to look at a spreadsheet, she would have seen the numbers were in her favor. But she didn't." I turned back to Mom, who had collapsed onto the new leather sofa. Her eyes were suddenly wet, but not with anger. It was a mix of shock and, surprisingly, shame. The shame of being outmaneuvered by the daughter she thought was too naive, and the shame of realizing her own words had triggered this final, absolute separation. I pulled a small silver key from my pocket, the key to my little studio apartment, and placed it gently on the dining table. "I'm flying out tomorrow. I've accepted a transfer with my firm. Houston," I said, my voice soft. "I bought a place there, small but mine. Fully mine. The first thing I've owned that didn't come with a debt to my family." I paused, letting my eyes sweep over the confused faces of my relatives. "For years, I believed I had to buy your love, Mom. I had to pay for your safety, your comfort, your lifestyle. I finally realized that the only person I was robbing was myself. By putting you here, I'm finally free to build my own life." I walked over to the front door, stopping on the threshold. Mom watched me, silent tears tracing paths through her makeup. I gave her a small, honest smile. "I hope you are very happy here, Mom. You earned it. We all did." I walked out the front door, leaving the sound of the soft jazz and the absolute silence of the family behind me. I didn't look back. The evening air felt clean and light on my skin. I got in my small paid-off car and drove straight to a little bistro where Dad was waiting for me. He stood up as I approached, his face etched with pride and a little sadness. "You did it, Sarah. You really did it," he said, pulling out a chair for me. I ordered a glass of wine, the first one I'd truly allowed myself to enjoy in years. The revenge felt clean, financially sound, and completely necessary for my survival. But the story doesn't end there, because what I learned from this entire saga is that financial revenge often just leads to emotional emptiness. The first 6 months in Houston were everything I had wanted: freedom, peace, and the quiet satisfaction of watching my own savings grow. My new condo, small as it was a sanctuary. I changed my number, I cut all contact. I was finally Serafina, not the family ATM. Then 6 months later, I got an email. It wasn't from Mom or Kendra. It was from Mr. Thompson, the lawyer. It was short and formal. "Vivian Jones has been trying to reach you. Please contact me regarding the property in Charlotte." I almost deleted it, but something held me back. I called him. Mr. Thompson explained that Mom had sold the Charlotte house. The house I had bought for her, free and clear, 6 months after I left. My first reaction was cold fury. She was back to her old ways, squandering assets. Why? I demanded. Where is she living now? She sold it to a nice young couple, cash offer, closed last month, he said calmly. And she bought the Beaufort Beach house. I froze. But she traded her share to me? I own her portion of the estate. Yes, you do. She bought the shares from the other heirs. She used the cash you gave her. The $150,000 difference, plus the profit from the Charlotte house sale, to buy out the entire property. She now owns the beach house outright, too. She renovated it, paid for it all with the money you left her, and she's living there now. I sank into my sofa. This wasn't the expected outcome. The machine learning model hadn't predicted this. My mother, the financially naive woman, had taken my revenge, my financial separation, and used it as a launch pad for her own, even greater, financial security. The Beaufort house, her lifelong dream, was now hers. And she was happy. A few weeks later, a package arrived from her. No return address. Inside was a hand-knitted shawl and a letter. It wasn't full of apologies or pleas. It was just a small, simple note. Serafina, I know you left because of what I said at the party. You thought I was ungrateful. I was. I was also scared. Scared that you were becoming me, a woman whose entire worth was tied up in debt and the expectations of others. You taught me the biggest lesson that day. You taught me the difference between a house and a home. The money you gave me wasn't revenge. It was the financial freedom to finally choose my own life, too. I didn't just get a house. I got a new beginning. I'm sorry it took such a dramatic act for me to see your strength. Come visit the beach house sometime. The front door is always unlocked. Love, Mom. I cried that day, but not in anger. The shawl was beautiful, a mix of deep greens and blues. My mother hadn't just gotten a house. She had gotten an understanding of herself. And I realized my calculated vengeance had accidentally given her a final, beautiful gift. The gift of her own agency. I still haven't gone to Beaufort. But every Sunday, I call. She answers, and the first thing she says is, "The ocean is beautiful today, baby girl." If you could give one final unexpected gift to the person who hurt you the most, a gift that would change their life for the better, even if it meant giving up your revenge, what would it be? Let me know in the comments below, and please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story of unexpected family twists.